The British royal family has always understood that its greatest decisions are rarely made in public. While the world watches coronations, royal weddings, and state banquets, the choices that truly shape the monarchy often happen behind closed doors, far away from television cameras and newspaper headlines. Sometimes, those decisions involve titles. Sometimes, they concern succession. But every now and then, they revolve around something much older than either, history itself. That is precisely why the latest development surrounding the Duke of Kent has captured the attention of royal historians and palace observers alike. At first glance, it appeared to be nothing more than a routine legal matter involving a private family estate. Yet as more details quietly emerged, it became clear that this was far more than an ordinary inheritance. Hidden behind official paperwork was a decision capable of influencing how one of Britain's oldest royal legacies will be remembered for generations. The man at the center of this remarkable story is the Duke of Kent. For decades, he has remained one of the monarchy's most dependable figures. While other members of the royal family regularly found themselves dominating headlines, the Duke built his reputation through quiet service rather than public attention. He represented the crown across changing reigns, international events, military ceremonies, and thousands of official engagements without ever seeking personal recognition. That lifetime of dedication gave him something few people inside the institution possess: perspective. After serving the monarchy for more than 80 years, the Duke has witnessed almost every challenge imaginable. He has seen traditions preserved, customs abandoned, reputations rise, and once powerful branches of the family slowly fade into history. More importantly, he understands that preserving a royal legacy is not simply about protecting buildings or ceremonies. It is about ensuring that the symbols carrying the family's story remain connected to those who will continue serving the crown. According to reports circulating among palace insiders, that belief became the guiding principle behind one of the most significant private decisions of his life. Instead of allowing one of his family's most treasured sapphire collections to follow the predictable path of inheritance, the Duke reportedly chose a completely different direction. His decision surprised many, not because the collection itself lacked importance, but because of the person entrusted with protecting it. That person was Catherine, the Princess of Wales. To understand why this choice has generated so much discussion, it's important to understand the difference between royal property and private property. Many people assume every historic jewel owned by the royal family belongs to the crown. In reality, that isn't the case. Britain's famous crown jewels remain part of the monarchy itself. They cannot simply be gifted away or inherited like ordinary family possessions. They exist for the institution, passing from one monarch to another. Private collections, however, operate under entirely different legal rules. When jewels belong personally to an individual royal, that person has the authority to decide exactly where those treasures will go after their lifetime. No king automatically controls them. No queen can simply claim them. And no palace committee has the legal power to overrule the owner's wishes. That distinction may sound technical, but in royal history, it changes everything. Because once an object becomes private property, it is no longer governed by royal protocol. It becomes governed by personal judgment. The Duke of Kent understood this better than almost anyone alive. Throughout his lifetime, he watched priceless heirlooms disappear from royal collections because families faced financial pressure, inheritance taxes, or changing personal circumstances. Once sold, many of those historic pieces vanished into private collections around the world, never to appear at another state occasion. For someone who spent decades protecting royal traditions, watching history scatter piece by piece was deeply unsettling. Every lost jewel represented more than financial value. It represented another chapter of Britain's royal story slipping beyond public view. That memory appears to have shaped the careful planning of his estate. Rather than focusing solely on family relationships, reports suggest the Duke asked himself a different question altogether. Who could best preserve these treasures not simply as possessions, but as living symbols of the monarchy? The answer gradually pointed toward Catherine. Over the past decade, the Princess of Wales has become one of the most respected members of the royal family, earning admiration through patience, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to public service. Her role has expanded steadily as Prince William moved closer to his future responsibilities, and with each passing year, she demonstrated a remarkable ability to balance modern expectations with centuries-old royal traditions. Unlike many public figures whose popularity rises and falls with media attention, Catherine built trust slowly. She rarely sought unnecessary publicity. Instead, she allowed consistent service to define her public image. Whether attending community events, supporting children's charities, representing Britain overseas, or standing beside the royal family during moments of national importance, she became a symbol of continuity at a time when the monarchy itself faced significant change. Then came one of the most difficult chapters of her life. Her health battle drew worldwide attention, prompting an extraordinary wave of public support that extended far beyond Britain. Messages of encouragement arrived from across the Commonwealth and around the globe. The compassion shown toward Catherine transformed her public standing in a way few royal observers could have predicted. She was no longer admired simply because she was the Princess of Wales. She had become a figure whose resilience resonated with millions. For someone like the Duke of Kent, who spent a lifetime measuring character through service rather than headlines, such resilience carried enormous significance. Strength under pressure had always been one of the monarchy's defining qualities. History repeatedly demonstrated that public confidence often depended less on moments of celebration than on the ability to endure hardship with dignity. Catherine had done exactly that. And perhaps that explained why she increasingly appeared to represent the monarchy's future in the eyes of many senior figures within the institution. Yet there was another reason this reported decision attracted attention. The Duke and Catherine were not strangers connected only through family gatherings. Over several years, they had worked together within royal organizations, allowing the Duke to observe her approach firsthand. Their interactions were not limited to ceremonial appearances or formal photographs. They involved genuine collaboration, shared responsibilities, and countless opportunities to witness how each approached public duty. Those experiences likely carried far more influence than public opinion polls ever could. Because trust inside the royal family is rarely built through speeches. It is built quietly, one engagement at a time, one responsibility after another, one demonstration of reliability repeated over many years. By the time discussions surrounding the future of the Duke's private estate reportedly began, Catherine had already established herself as someone who understood that royal history is not something to be admired from a distance. It is something to be protected. And as the Duke looked toward the future of his family's historic sapphire collection, one question remained impossible to ignore. If these remarkable jewels were destined to survive another century, who would ensure they continued telling their story, not from inside a vault, but before the eyes of the world? The answer to that question became clearer as the Duke of Kent reflected on the changing role of the modern monarchy. Over the years, he had witnessed the institution evolve from one generation to the next, adapting to political shifts, changing public expectations, and the constant pressure of global media. While traditions remained important, he understood that traditions alone could not secure the monarchy's future. They required people capable of carrying them with dignity. That realization appears to have influenced every stage of his reported estate planning. Unlike previous generations, where family rank alone often determined the path of inheritance, the Duke's thinking seemed increasingly focused on purpose. To him, these historic jewels were never simply beautiful possessions locked away inside velvet-lined cases. They represented living history, symbols meant to appear during moments that mattered to the nation. Every state banquet, every diplomatic reception, every royal celebration. Each appearance reminded the public that today's monarchy remained connected to centuries of history. Without those visible links, even the oldest traditions could slowly lose their meaning. This explains why Catherine's growing responsibilities attracted so much attention inside royal circles. Over the past several years, she gradually assumed a more central role in representing the royal family. Whether welcoming foreign dignitaries, supporting charitable organizations, or attending major ceremonial events, her presence became increasingly associated with stability. Royal observers often noted one particular quality. She rarely attempted to dominate attention. Instead, she allowed the occasion itself to remain the focus. That approach echoed the philosophy followed by many senior royals from earlier generations, including the Duke himself. Duty came before publicity. Responsibility came before recognition. Perhaps that shared outlook created a mutual respect that developed naturally over time. The Duke had spent decades watching members of the royal family perform public service. He understood that genuine commitment could not be measured by a single successful appearance or a carefully managed media campaign. It revealed itself through consistency, year after year, engagement after engagement, responsibility after responsibility. By every visible measure, Catherine continued meeting those expectations. As discussions surrounding the Duke's private estate reportedly progressed, another important consideration emerged. The future. Not merely the next few years, but the next 50. Estate planning inside the royal family has always involved long-term thinking. Decisions made today often affect generations yet to come. Historic collections survive only when each generation chooses preservation over convenience. The Duke understood that reality better than anyone. He had already witnessed valuable family treasures disappear during previous decades. Financial pressures forced some collections to be broken apart. Individual pieces found new owners across Europe, North America, and private auction houses around the world. Although those sales solved immediate problems, they permanently separated objects that had once formed complete royal collections. For historians, such losses cannot truly be replaced. Each missing piece leaves another gap in the historical record. That experience may explain why reports suggest the Duke refused to view these sapphires as ordinary inheritance. Instead, he reportedly regarded them as a responsibility. Responsibilities are not always passed to the closest relative. Sometimes they are entrusted to the person considered most capable of protecting them. In many ways, Catherine fit that description perfectly. By this stage of her royal career, she represented far more than the Princess of Wales. She had become the future queen. Every appearance she made carried symbolic importance because it reflected not only the present monarchy but also the institution that would eventually be led by William and Catherine together. That future mattered greatly. If private royal treasures remained connected to the future sovereign's household, they would almost certainly continue appearing during important national occasions. If they passed elsewhere, their public story could quietly end. That possibility appears to have weighed heavily on the Duke's thinking. Another fascinating element involves the legal distinction surrounding private royal wealth. Many members of the public assume the reigning monarch ultimately controls every important royal possession. The reality is considerably more complex. Private inheritances remain legally independent. That independence grants their owners extraordinary freedom. When a private collection changes hands, the decision belongs entirely to its owner, provided legal requirements are satisfied. Neither tradition nor expectation automatically overrides personal ownership. For someone as experienced as the Duke of Kent, understanding those legal protections offered a unique opportunity. He could personally determine where his family's legacy would continue. Without interference. Without negotiation. Without uncertainty. Reports suggest that every legal detail was carefully arranged to ensure clarity for future generations. Such planning reflects the Duke's lifelong reputation for discipline. Military precision had shaped much of his public career. It seems that same careful planning extended into his private affairs. Nothing was left to chance. Every decision appears to have served one larger objective: preservation. Not preservation for its own sake, but preservation through active royal service. As these reports spread among palace commentators, inevitable comparisons began emerging between Catherine and Queen Camilla. Those comparisons, however, often misunderstood the situation. Official royal collections and privately owned collections operate under completely different systems. Camilla, as queen, naturally wears pieces associated with the reigning monarch. Those jewels symbolize the authority of the crown itself. Private collections tell different stories. They belong to individuals rather than institutions. The reported transfer therefore does not replace one role with another. Instead, it highlights two separate traditions existing side by side. One represents the present reign. The other quietly prepares for the future. That distinction carries enormous symbolic significance. Because while official regalia belongs to whoever occupies the throne, private heirlooms can become deeply associated with a single royal figure for decades. Many historians believe those personal connections often resonate even more strongly with the public. People remember the individual who wore them, not simply the collection itself. Should Catherine become permanently linked with the historic sapphire collection, those jewels would eventually tell two stories at once. They would honor the generations who preserved them, and they would symbolize the beginning of another chapter under the future queen. Perhaps that possibility was exactly what convinced the Duke his family's legacy would remain secure. As palace watchers continued analyzing every detail, attention gradually shifted toward another member of the royal family, Princess Charlotte. Because every carefully protected royal collection eventually reaches another generation. The question was no longer simply who would wear these historic sapphires today. The more intriguing question had become, who would inherit their story tomorrow? That question may ultimately become the most important chapter of this entire story. Throughout royal history, jewels have rarely been valued simply because of their diamonds, sapphires, or precious metals. Their true worth has always rested in what they represent. Every necklace, tiara, and brooch carries memories of the people who once wore them, the occasions they witnessed, and the generations they quietly connected. Long after speeches are forgotten and ceremonies fade from public memory, These objects continue telling the story of the monarchy without saying a single word. The Duke of Kent understood that better than almost anyone alive. After spending more than 8 decades serving the crown, he knew that history survives through continuity. Institutions remain respected because each generation chooses to preserve what the previous one protected. Once that chain is broken, rebuilding it becomes almost impossible. This appears to explain why his reported decision was never about selecting a favorite member of the royal family.